Hello, I'm Milan Popovic, FIDE master with 2 international master norms and professional chess coach. And in this course, I'm going to represent you the Anti-Sicilian manual for white. So let's see what we're going to see there and how we're going to organize our repertoire after e4 and c5. So this course is consisted of 24 theoretical chapters with one additional chapter where we are going to take a look on the most important model games. So idea will be that we are not going to go too much into the move by move theory, but instead it all will going to be organized by ideas, and we are going to try to understand the middle game plans, and that way basically we are going to organize our theory in Sicilians. So let's see what we are going to explore. E4, C5, and there white has a lot of side lines. Basically, there is a standard side lines with a knight c3 going for the closed Sicilian. There is as well the Alpine variation after the move c3. So those are all, let's say, frequently played side lines, but we are going to play the move knight f3. Of course, even there exists a lot of side lines, especially with the move d6, we are quite often seeing that even the top players are playing the move bishop b5, cutting a theory there by playing this move, of course. But we are not going to play the move bishop b5. We are going to continue with the move d4. It looks like we are going to enter the main Sicilian after taking back with a knight, but that's not going to be the case. After black taking on d4, we're going to capture back with a queen. So that's going to lead to the Chekhover Variation, the Sicilian. Very interesting line for white, where white will have an attacking intentions, quite often castling long. In certain lines where black doesn't allow this plan, white is going to go for a short castle, and this is going to be very practical and crushing repertoire for white against the second move d6. What we're going to explore is going to be the line knight c6. We're going to play the move bishop b5, bishop d7, white takes, black takes back with a bishop, and right now white will just try to basically create an attacking ideas on the king side after knight c3, knight f6. White will just develop the bishop on g5, castle long, and there is going to start the very interesting middle game for white. This is going to be our approach against the second d6, so let's explore the rest of the Sicilians. The second frequently played move is the knight c6, and there we have idea, of course, going for bishop b5. This is the Sicilian variation and the very frequently used side line. If white is, of course, not going for d4 in the main lines, but I actually realized that the bishop c4 is even more interesting move and actually very tricky line. It recently started to be very popular, not that much among the players, let's say up to maybe 2,500, but certainly on the top level, this line has been tried in the last couple of years, and this is a very interesting approach. This is certainly not that well explored, and black is not expecting this move to be on the board, so I think this is going to be very interesting weapon against the second knight c6. We're as well going to face the move e6. And there I came up with this idea to just play d4. Of course, right now, again, we think that we are going to enter the main lines, but not. We are going to take with the queen. And we are going to take a very similar approach as in the Chekhover Variation. In fact, this line has a lot of transpositions with the Chekhover Variation, which is actually quite a good thing because we can just basically learn either one type of position, or sometimes even the same positions are going to repeat, so we don't need to look for different theory and different positions to learn. So that's going to be very practical. After the move, let's say a6, we are going to enter the c4. This position going to be quite, let's say, standard from the Chekhover Variation of the Sicilian, and white is going to play this so-called Marazzi structure for white. In case of the move knight c6, which is the main line, we're going to retreat queen e3, and after knight f6, white is just simply going to go for the move knight c3, and this is going to be very fun middle game after d5, knight e5, we take with a knight, black takes back with a queen, and we continue with the move bishop d3. So this is going to be very interesting, in fact, very active, like a rising position right after the opening, and the white is going to have very active plans in the middle game. So the second d6 is going to be treated very similarly to the second d6, pretty much going for the queen d4. There, black has the move g6, and we are going to play the move c3. This is a very well strategically based move. We are having an idea of just taking the center, which makes a lot of sense. So just because black is not taking too much action in the center, let's try to do it. So let's say black goes for the move bishop g7, which is quite, let's say, standard in this position. And there we are going to go for the move d4. After black takes c takes d4, we are capturing back with a pawn. And after eventual, let's say, d5, we're simply going to play the move e5. So right now, white has taken the center. Position looks very good for white, and it's of course just a starting position, but we are going to explore that white is going to have quite interesting plans. One of the ideas that we can mention is that after bishop d4, we are going to continue with the move bishop b5, and after knight to c6, we are simply going to take the knight, and after black takes with a pawn, we are going to continue with the knight bd2. This way we're going to show an intention to actually organize our play in the middle game, mainly on the dark squares. So this is going to be quite an interesting concept that you're going to explore in this like opening line. Apart from those, let's say, 4 Sicilians that are frequently played, we have like the 2 Sicilians which are not that frequently played, and those are the move like a6 and knight f6. So against the a6, I'm just suggesting the very simple approach: d4, c takes d4, and again queen d4. So just keeping it very similar and practical as like the Chekhover Variation. So it's going to be very like interesting line. In fact, quite a lot of lines are just going to be the direct transposition to either second move e6 or second move d6. So it's going to be very practical. And to be honest, by playing this line for quite some time, probably like more than 10 years, like all those queen d4 systems, I really realize that people are not well prepared against this. So this is going to be very interesting and very practical, let's say, weapon for white. And there is as well the line knight f6 called the Nimzovich variation of the Sicilian. We are going to play the move e5, knight e5. And there I thought about finding some different sidelines, but I realized that the let's say covering the main line will really take that much time. So just going for this line makes a lot of sense. But the thing is that we are not going to just go into the mainstream, exploring a lot of theory. But let's say after knight c6, we are of course going to play the move bishop f4, which is a standard move there. And after queen b6, which is actually quite frequently played in this position, we are not going to go for the one of those moves which are going to defend the pawn, like let's say the b3, rook b1, or even queen c1. Instead, we are going to take an active and dynamic approach. We're going to play bishop d3, which is almost a novelty. In fact, probably the best move in the position. And after black takes the pawn, we are going to castle, which is going to be a very tough position for black to play. In fact, white has a lot of initiative, and white has a very good attacking chances. So those are going to be the, let's say, main Sicilians that we are going to cover. But apart from that, in one chapter, we are going to cover as well all those side lines that we can face in Sicilians, which are, of course, like quite frequently played, but just to make it a very, let's say, complete repertoire after e4, c5, we're going to cover even the lines like b6, let's say h6, or some other kind of, weird-looking moves in Sicilian. So this is going to be really complete course after e4, c5. So all those lines are played quite, let's say, often on the top level. I've been using those lines for, some of those I'm already using for, let's say, more than 10, maybe even 15 years. Some of them I'm started like reusing like recently, and I really have a good experience with all of them. Those are very practical, I would say, easy to learn, and most importantly, there is not that much theory compared to the main Sicilians, where we will have really to go too much in details and to understand some, specific details about the position. But there we are going to make it very practical, very, let's say, easy to digest, and it's going to be very, let's say, simple approach against the Sicilians. So thank you, and see you in the next chapter, where we're going to start with the Chekhover variation and with basically the theory of the main line in like the position after e4, c5, knight f3, and d6. So thank you, and see you later. Hello, and welcome to the first chapter of the Anti-Sicilian manual. In this chapter, we are going to explore the main line of the Chekhover variation. So let's see how it goes. So we are going to start with the move e4, as I said, c5, knight f3, black goes with d6, and right now we are going to play the move d4. So black is taking, and right now we are not taking back with a knight, but with a queen. So this strategically looks a bit weird that we are activating the queen that early in the game, but white certainly has an attacking ideas that we are going to explore into this chapter. So let's see how it goes. Black replies with the move knight c6. We are playing the move bishop b5. Black goes with the bishop b7, and we are simply going to take on c6. So this is the first point where black could try to take maybe with a pawn. Of course, the bishop takes with the main line, but let's see how we're going to handle the positions where black takes back with a pawn. So first of all, right now, we can't really go for a long castle because the b file is open. So that wouldn't be that simple to just organize some attack in these circumstances. Of course, black, by taking back with a pawn, has covering more squares in the center, and because of that, we are going to play with the move c4. So we're just taking more action in the center. Black is going to reply with the move e5, and right now the best square for the queen is going to be the d3. So certainly we are going to keep this, let's say, diagonal for the bishop, of course, and right now black could go for, let's say, different like plans. The one idea is to go with the move knight f6. We are simply going to castle. Right now, black has an idea of playing just the move h6, but the way how white is going to, let's say, fight for advantage is going to be very interesting move, just playing the move c5. So what's the point behind the move? White will just break the black's pawn structure, and after, for instance, bishop to e6, we're taking d6. Queen and d6 going to be taken, and right now we can just retreat the queen, just keeping the queens on the board, and after potential queen c5 or maybe bishop e7, we are going to continue with the move knight c3. And right now white is claiming a better pawn structure. It's true that black has a bishop pair, but this is not like a big issue, since we are really going to have a, let's say, better pawn structure. So white is, let's say, claiming a slight advantage right now. Instead of this move, black can of course play the move bishop e7. We are going to play the move knight c3, and right now, after the move castle, again white is going to use this very important way to just start creating some pressure into the black's position, which is the move c5. Black is going to play the move queen c7. We can just take on d6, and after a capture like this, we can just simply go for bishop g5, bishop e7, and centralize the rooks. White has ideas of just knight e2, knight c4 long term, rook ac1, and that's how, let's say, this middle game will work. Certainly, there is a very good potential playing against a couple of weaknesses on the queen side that black has, mainly the c6 and a7 pawns. So this is a very interesting line. Instead, black has, as well, apart from playing knight f6, black has the idea of playing queen c7. This is a little bit more, let's say, wiser approach from black. Black is certainly immediately defending the pawn on e5. In case of c5, we can just play it, but we're most likely going to just purely sacrifice the pawn, which might be playable, but certainly it's not the best. So there we are simply going to play knight c3. Black's reply is going to be bishop e7, let's say. We're castling, and there h6. If black goes for the move knight f6, we can just play the move bishop g5, and we are having some ideas of, let's say, playing rook ad1 or rook ac1, and maybe putting a pressure on this pawn where we might think of maybe taking on f6 and potentially just doubling up black pawns. For instance, if black castles, we can play the move rook fd1, and right now there is already a serious threat of just taking on f6 and just, let's say, forcing black to either give up the pawn or just to double up his pawns down the f file. So that's the our plan, but instead of this, black could go for the move h6. So right now, white has to come up with a different plan. So as neither bishop g5 or c5 works, so we are going to play the move b4, which is a very interesting, let's say, way to play this position. In fact, black is going to have certain problems around the d5 square once we manage to approach with our pawn to the b5. Our idea is going to be simply to just, let's say, weaken the d5 square, and let's see how it will go. So knight f6, we are going to play the move bishop e3, castle, and rook f to c1. Right now this rook belongs to c file, while the a rook is going to go to the b file. So queen b7, rook ab1, and after bishop e6, we can simply play the move h3, just to stabilize the position on the king side, not to allow some knight g4 jumps or so. And our next ideas are going to play, let's say, a4, b5, and this way just to fight for a d5 square. The most important thing is just to, let's say, be active in such a middle game, because if you're playing it passively, black is most likely going to fully consolidate and to play d5 himself. So that's basically, what white is getting out of this position. White has a slight advantage. This is certainly a positional middle game, but keeping a pressure there, it's always fun, whether it's positional or attacking. So let's see what's going to be in the main line where black is taking back with a bishop. So black takes back with a bishop on c6, and right now we are just going to continue with the move knight c3. So again, this is the moment in the game where black would try to go for certain sidelines. In general, what you could say about this position is that we already gave up the bishop pair. So strategically, that might look like a bit risky for us to just play it that way. But what's the point is that white gave up the bishop pair, but white is getting a lot of initiative in the opening, and white's development is quite speeded up. So right now, we're going to play the move bishop g5, and just simply to let's say, castle next move in case of the blacks replying with a 7th, knight f6. But let's look for some black potential, let's say, sidelines there. First of all, if black goes for the move e6, we're going to play the move bishop g5, and right now, knight f6 going to be the pure transposition into the main line. So apart from that, there is queen f5, but these type of moves before black castles really are quite risky, mainly because of the ideas of rook h1, king b1, and even the knight e5 after that could be very dangerous for black, the standard Sicilian sacrifice. So there we're going to take a look first on two moves, which are basically e5 and h6. So let's see what is the thing with e5. So e5 is played mainly by players who are, let's say, playing the Najdorf. In case of white goes for the main Sicilian, they like to play this e5 move. We're going to retreat to d3. Again, d3 just controls the d5 square. Bishop is still open, and that's how it goes. The move h6 is a crucial move in this position because it's not allowing the move bishop g5 after knight f6. We are of course going to see what is about this move, and after this one we are actually simply going to reroute our knights and to put some pressure on d5 square. After knight f6, knight c4, we are simply going to reroute that way. So let's see what else black could try. There's the move bishop e7. Right now we can just simply castle, and after black's playing the move h6, we're going to play the move rook d1. So knight f6 is the standard black's reply, and then we are going to use the squares, f5 square especially. So we're going to start with the move knight h4. After g6, we can simply go for the move a4, and after queen c7, b3. So in case of some standard, let's say, rook to c8, we can just go back with a knight. White has a good position because black has weakened his, let's say, king side playing the move g6, and it's not entirely clear how black is going to further continue his development. What's a clear thing is that if black really castles, once we get knight f5 on the board, it's a very tough position for black. Right now we're having ideas of bishop h6, and it's a very unpleasant position for black, something that is really tough to handle. So there, let's see why we are saying that this knight f6 is maybe a suspicious move for black. So first of all, with playing e5, black has created the closed position in the center. There is the d5 square, which is right now the most important square in the position. And by playing knight f6, black is just trying to take some control over this square, but there's no move bishop to g5. So what is about this move? White is simply intending to give up the dark square bishop for the knights. And this goes in direction of just, let's say, keeping the two knights versus the two bishops in a closed position. So strategically, that makes a lot of sense. As we know that the knights are better than the bishops in a closed positions, that's what we're going to do. So after bishop e7, bishop takes f6, black is going to take back, we're castling. Just as simple as that. We're putting a pressure on the d6 pawn right now. Black could try to go for the queen b6. We can just go for queen e2, bishop e7, and very simple approach, knight e5. In this position, black might not need to take. He might go back, but this is going to be a very passive position, where white can even create advancing the pawns on the king side, like h4, g4, and so on. So what happens there is that black just gives up the bishop. We take back with the rook, and right now we are having a very good, let's say, positional advantage. So rook f d1 has to be played, king b1. This knight is planned to go for d5. So we might reroute the knight via d2, c4, e3, and d5. This is our long-term idea. Of course, in the chapter of the model games, we're going to see one game where actually white managed to quite well organize the plan, and it worked quite good. So, of course, there is the move bishop e7 as well. And in case of this move, we can just go for the move knight e2. Right now, we are in time to just continue with the move knight c4, knight e3, and knight d5. Let's just castle. We can play the move knight c4. Black more or less has to play queen c7. Taking the pawn is not possible because black could easily pin our, let's say, queen. So we're going to play the king b1. Very simple move. But the idea behind the move will be not to allow black to go for bishop g5. Because right now, if we would play this bishop knight e3, black will be able to go for, let's say, bishop g5. And it won't be in time to just take, let's say, get a d5 square. Of course, in this case, we can win the pawn. But strategically, it's not going to be such a simple position to convert after, let's say, black taking there. So because of that, in order to take the simplest, route to, let's say, a very long-term advantage, we are going to play the move king b1. Right now, there is no point in playing bishop g5 because we can just take queen d6. So after rook d8, we can play knight e3. Black goes back, and just knight enters the d5 square. After black takes, it's very important to mention that we are almost never taking back with a pawn, because if we take back with a pawn, we're simply going to, we're not going to have that much pressure to the, let's say, d6 pawn in long term. So we're always taking back with a piece, but of course, preferably with a knight. So after the knight d5, white is getting a very strong position. Right there, black has a very passive minor piece, which is the bishop on f8. And white has to do it just to start basically advancing the pawns on the king side, and it's just very tough for black to handle this position. So we got to our conclusion that basically playing knight f6 is a very inaccurate there. So this is the line which really doesn't work for black. So because of that, we are going to explore the move h6 in this position. So this is a smart move. Of course, black has a very similar intentions. And right now, as we know that black is going to play the move e5, we're simply going to play for the queen d3. A prophylactic move, simply just expecting this move. But in case that black changed his mind and go for the move e6, right now you're going to create an attacking plan, like very interesting one, with the move b3. So let's see how we'll organize the things. So black goes for knight f6. We're going to play the bishop b2, bishop e7. You're going to castle, and after short castle, knight e4. Centralizing the knight, but actually just preparing our pawn storm on the king side. In fact, after the potential a6, king b1, this king b1 is mentioned like like will be mentioned basically a couple of times, even in this chapter. But what's the point with this move? In Sicilian, this is a very important move to be played because our king is then like like moving from some potential danger that could be like that could happen down the c file, and it's a very stable like square for the king. So after potential black, let's say queen c7, right now white is able to start, let's say, creating a very good action on the king side with the move g4. Queen g3 is coming, and white is just getting a very, let's say, good attacking chances. So it looks very promising for white for sure. There, of course, e6 is not that frequently played. Black would try the move knight f6, but right now we're not going to castle short. The worst thing in this Chekhover variation is to play passively. So if we castle short, we will not have that huge chances of, let's say, getting or fighting for advantage in this main line, because right now we still have to keep in mind black has the bishop pair. So if we play this position slowly and black manages to open up the position with some e6, d5, and so on, white will not really have any, let's say, advantage, or maybe white will be even in some potential danger. So our idea is going to be like of basically attacking nature. So knight e4. Black goes for the move e6, and right now I analyzed this position and realized that the move bishop d2 is actually better than going for e3. So that's mainly because of the idea that queen might sometimes participate into the, let's say, king side like that. So let's see, bishop e7 and long castle, of course. We're just playing this very actively. After black, let's say, castle short, we don't need to, let's say, waste the time. We can immediately strike with the move g4, and of course if it's taken we can just go there. If it's not taken, we might maybe support it with the rook and to continue with the h4 and g5. So it's a very, very, let's say, interesting attacking position for white. So looks very basically dangerous for black. So let's get to the main point. h6 is played, and we are of course going to face the move e5 in this position. So where it goes right now. In this position, if we just castle, play some normal looking move, and black managed to consolidate playing the knight f6, bishop e7, castle, and we continue playing some, let's say, calm moves, black is going to play d5. And after eventual, let's say, trades in the center, black might open up his bishop pair, or in other words, black might get rid of the d6 potential weakness, open up the position, and use the bishop pair in an open position. So our idea will be to try to play, to get a control over this square, d5 square, as quickly as possible. So knight e2 is a very good move there, to just get our knight to the e3 square. So let's say black goes for the move knight f6. We're going to play the move knight c4. There, d5 would be nice to, like, if it would work, but unfortunately for black it doesn't work, because white is able to take on e5, and after this capture we're going to play the move queen to c4. There, black is having the move queen c7, defending the f7 square, where we can just play active bishop to f4. And after this one, white has a very nice move to be played, just queen f7, black takes, and after this capture, black is more or less, let's say, forced to capture the bishop, and after, let's say, this move, white is just getting an escaping square with a knight, and white is just basically much better in this position. Of course, black could try to take with the king, but after bishop d6, those are opposite color bishops, this is an opposite color bishop's middle game, but certainly White's bishop is even more active, and white has quite good winning chances there. So this d5 really is not well timed in this position. Black might try maybe to play the move b5, just to try to take it, very actively. The move queen b6, and there I like the stable a3. So where it might go, if black goes for some queen b7, we can just simply play the move f3, still not allowing black to d5 pawn break. After a5, we can just go for a castle, and after bishop e7, white can just play the move knight f5. This is already like a bit of a problem for black. Instead, black might try to play the move rook d8, but then we're just going to stop black's actions on the queen side with the move b4. And after some a4, we can play the move bishop e2. I suppose right now black might open up the center, but let's say with the d5, but it's simply not going to be effective because after let's say couple of trades, our bishop is going to be super active, and black is not, going to be in time to get some let's say good position, as he's still his king is still like in the center. So there, like in case of this bishop e7, actually the rook d8, b4, a4, and bishop e7, white can again get this knight on f5. If black castles, white right now could even get ideas of just playing the move f4 and just using this bishop down that diagonal with the queen on g3. Very tough position for black. White is having a very good attacking chances. So another black's approach might be to play the move queen d4, but after, let's say, f3, just keeping everything protected in the center. Queen d3, c takes d3. White's position is going to be very solid, but it's not about being solid. It's actually that white is going to get a slightly better queenless middle game. The queens are off the board. The position is pretty much closed, so white is getting some slight advantage. Bishop d2 could be played, rook to c1, and white is getting a nice, chances to fight for advantage in this position.